Okay, I'm really jealous because we're talking about trail mix, and I love trail mix. How's everybody doing? Hi, by the way, my name is Crystal and Sophia. I am your friendly astrological magician, and we have some pretty interesting astrology coming up this week. Some of it is stuff you'll have been hearing about just by transit, and then there are some things that are happening that are, having to do with the nodes. And July is nuts with the Aries ingress metaphorical timing that's coming up for the United States. So it is a busy month. And if you're already feeling that energy of the impending, just lots of stuff coming, it's a really good intuition on that. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of energy coming this month and kicking in this week, especially. And it's going to be quite a ride for the next couple months. If we look at the timing techniques for the Aries ingress, July, August, a little bit into September, have a lot going on. So it's the summer of stuff. We can call it that. So I am here to answer any questions you might have, and I've got some stuff we can chat about in the meantime. Jenny, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Everybody else who is here. Amber, thank you for being our wonderful mod. I love that we're talking about trail mix. That's amazing. That sounds really, really fun. Cool. Awesome. Christina, good to see you. And let me just get rid of this notification that's blocking my chat. There we go. Cool. So if you have any questions, if you have anything you would like to talk about today, we can absolutely do that. Good morning, Kathy. Hi. So just put that in the chat. Have a conversation with each other in the chat. This is your time with each other as much as it is my opportunity to talk with you all this week. That's at least how I want this to feel. I really like that this gets to sort of kick off our week with a mood boost on a Monday where you get to have community just as much as information going on. So I hope that that's what this feels like. We also have Mercury retrograde coming up this week. It snuck up on me. I was looking at, we are also, Christina, in Saturn retrograde. Right now, I'm actually going to pull up my handy dandy document that I use mostly for our Patreon. If you're even on my free tier in Patreon, you get weekly updates as to like what is going on in the sky. And it's a lot usually. This week, though, the primary mover is going to be Mercury retrograde. It's the biggest one, and it's going to station retrograde sextile Venus, which is kind of nice. It's like if we have to start a Mercury retrograde, I'd love to have Venus having a say in that. Do I have a P.O. box? I do not, no. But I do have ways to get in contact with me if that's what you're interested in, Jenny. If you want to email me through my website for stuff like that, I am happy to connect with you there. That's the best way for my brain to manage things. DMs on social media and stuff, my brain is not organized in that space. My email box is where I come into Virgo mode. Echo, so much going on. I forgot Mercury retrograde was even a thing. Yeah. Hi, Jackie. So I was doing our stuff, Echo, because you're in the student study on Patreon. I was doing the stuff and I was like, man, we got to prepare for this. Whoops. And it's even going to be angular for me. It's always the transits that are going to hit me in a personal way that I'm just like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Like Uranus moving into Gemini. Thought that was going to make me like home free on other fronts. And then it's coming for my lot of fortune. So yes, we are all in this together is the long and the short of that. So when we get into this week coming up, we've got Mercury, which will be in retrograde, starting on the 18th of July through August 11th. We are still in Pluto retrograde. We're about to be halfway through Pluto retrograde next week. And that retrograde will last until October 13th. It occurs in Aquarius in the very beginning, like 1 degree area of Aquarius. And now we have Saturn retrograde. Saturn is retrograde in Aries until September 1st. And then Saturn will move back into Pisces and continue to retrograde until November 27th, during which time Saturn will station direct and have one final ingress into Aries. Similarly, Neptune's doing the same thing. Neptune's has been in retrograde for a little bit and will be in retrograde until October 22nd in Aries, move back into Pisces because Saturn and Neptune are like besties for a while. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then we'll be in Pisces until December 16th when Neptune will station direct. Then they will both be moving forward. And by February of next year, they will conjoin together in that first, maybe second degree of Aries, which is a pretty big deal. And even as we're talking now, there's a lot going on. And so to show you sort of, especially the new moon is next week. And so I can go more into that next week, but I kind of want to give you guys like the what's building thing. I think we might do like 2 weeks on this, if that feels good to you guys. I also do have a bit of a rant prepared, so I can do that for a little bit at the end as well. And so, do you want to look at the chart for what is leading up to the new moon that is occurring next week? That new moon is going to be on the 24th of July. I can't believe that's already next week. July just basically hasn't existed, which is so weird. But yeah, if you guys want to see the chart, I will show that to you because we have some stuff that is in effect and will be hanging out with us for a while. And now that Uranus has moved into Gemini as it did last week, we're really starting to feel that. So I figure it might be a good idea to just give you the overview of it and like the big picture so that as we're going through these next couple of years, which is going to be particularly activated by the new moon next week, it's just good stuff to be able to be like, okay, I know stuff feels like it's changing really quickly, but also I know that's the story that we're in right now. So what I want to do is ground us in to the energy of what's going on so that you can feel a little bit more present. They like to say forewarned is forearmed. I don't like how that puts us on the defensive. So I'm just going to say letting you know lets you know that you're in the right place. You know, if you know that you're supposed to be in a not tumultuous time, but you know, we're in Dorothy's tornado here. We're kind of headed to Oz a little bit right now. And so to be able to know that like, I'm not making a mistake just because things feel chaotic. The world is chaotic and I'm doing my best as part of it. And the craziest thing about being an astrologer is we see things coming up and we make these archetypal predictions. And then when they start coming about, I swear one of my things that I have to work the most on is I've already processed this emotion before it even showed up. And then I have to be present while it's happening. And that while it's happening feels like the longest thing because I'm ready for it to be on the other side of it. Cause I'm like, I know it's on the other side. I'm looking forward to that. I'm ready for it, but the world has now caught up. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of this foreknowledge as well. And you can do with it what feels best for you. And that's the idea, right? It's just getting a heads up that you're in the right place at the right time, even if it feels ridiculous. So let's go ahead. Seems like everybody is okay with me showing the screen. I'm going to do that. I'm going to pull this over here, pop that way so that it looks prettier for you. Actually, I can't move around if I do that. Okay, cool. So I'm going to show Luna. Here we go. Okay, we're going to see on Luna, and this is actually for the new moon because I was doing some work on that earlier today. So the new moon is around 3:15 in the afternoon East Coast time on July 24th. We've got the sun and the moon at 2 degrees of Leo. This, and I'm gonna come back where you guys are. I'm looking at the wrong screen here because I'm just looking at Luna. Cool, you can see it. So what we've got going on here, best way for me to see the chart and you at this time. There we go. Okay, so what we've got going on here is a lot. If I take away some of the chaos, it actually highlights the thing I want to tell you about. So this moon is happening in Leo, and you're like, well, Leo's not super busy. Yes, Mercury retrograde is happening in Leo as well, but it's far-ish enough away. The moon will apply to Mercury within the next 24 hours. And in fact, that is its next applying aspect, which does play into interpretation a little bit. So again, we're taking a lot of the Leo new moon energy and we're saying it's headed towards Mercury retrograde kind of resolutions here. So we want to keep that in mind. Mercury in retrograde, if you're going to do personal work with it, leads you to inner works, right? And it's a new moon. So it is kind of an inner works thing anyway. They complement each other a little bit if we're going to move to that psychological aspect of it. So this is a time to not be rushing yourself, to be giving yourself grace, and to be working on this big theme that's been popping up across many clients in my personal life, in my therapy sessions, and maybe for you guys as well, self-validation. And so the reason I talk about self-validation, and I will get into this a little bit more next week as well, The reason I talk about this is because this is a new moon in Leo. The sun and the moon, both luminaries, are in Leo. So our personal energy is in Leo at this point. It's very focused there. It's got conversations going on, which we'll talk about in a second, but we're focused on Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun. And so this sign that is ruled by the sun is about leadership. It's about, it gets the reputation of being about ego, but let's think about that, right? Our ego is the part of ourselves that's very preoccupied with how we're perceived and how we're doing in life, right? And so if we think about that and we don't attack it and we don't try to ignore it, we can try to nurture it a little bit. And we can say, okay, the sun is traditionally also the spirit. It's the fire inside of you that's guiding you through life. It is the torch you hold in front of you that shows you your next steps. This is important. And all of that comes around to saying that if we're thinking about the sun as our archetype and our metaphor here, the sun gives light to everything around it. But can you look directly at the sun? The answer is, I really hope the answer is no, not without special glasses, not without special tools. You cannot look directly at the sun. It will blind you. And so how we can translate this to really make stuff make more sense in our normal lives is when we're dealing with Leonine things, we're dealing with solar things. And that can be where we may draw attention without even really trying. It can be things that we're recognized for that we didn't realize we were being recognized for. Think about what house Leo is in your chart. And so that recognition may come pretty naturally, but we may not notice it because the sun, can't look at itself, but nobody can look directly at the sun either. So it's the light you are putting out and the warmth that you are giving and the life that you are fostering in your own life and in your own workings. And you may be kind of sitting in a position of, am I doing enough? Am I burning brightly enough? Am I being seen enough? Am I getting the validation I need for this? Because when we're seen, it's a validation, right? We know we're doing well because they say so, because this person says so, because I've gotten good feedback, all of those things. So maybe one of the secrets to Leo is to shine without needing someone to reflect it back to you. We don't need the magnifying glass that's going to burn holes in things. We don't need the mirror that's going to blind things back or give us burns, right? We just need to shine as if no one's watching. You could say it that way, but knowing that people are being warmed by it, right? Shine in the best way that you can, knowing that someone is getting that warmth and knowing that the best way for you to shine as well as you can is to just do what you love to do. The sun is also Leo is ruler of the heart, right? So we think about the heart, which powers the entire body, the heart, which is the metaphor for what leads us and guides us. If you are following your heart, which is pretty, you will be doing things really well. And if people have a problem with it, they're just siphoning and filtering themselves out of your experience and you're filtering yourself out of theirs. Marry, meet, marry, part, maybe meet again. Who knows? I modify that one depending on the situation, because you don't have to always come back. You don't have to say we're diverging and we have to come back together again at some point. Sometimes you just diverge. We never see trees make branches that, well, maybe sometimes you do. They come back around and they weave each other. We have bonsai artwork that does this, but trees very naturally will just split. And that's fine. We had this path together. It made us sturdier. And now we get to go in different directions and start affecting more areas of the world. You take that side, I'll take this side, and we're all happier for it. I think that's great. Hi, Rocio. Great to see you. So that's some stuff to think about when we're thinking about the energy of Leo. Like I said, we'll get more into that personally for you next week. Join us then. But what I want to highlight is Leo is not the only thing at play in this aspect. And in fact, since Uranus, who is here now, came into Gemini, you can see some stuff still sticks out here. So as the moon and the sun are headed towards Leo, which they're not quite there yet. Remember, the sun gets in next week, the moon gets in next week. They're going to amplify an aspect that's already in play. And that aspect is between outer planets. And so one of the things that we talk about in astrology is the outer planets sometimes need a mediator. They're doing things on a very big scale. They are moving and shifting and changing reality in a sort of sense, right? They're changing nature, they're changing politics, they're changing society. All of these things are a little bit higher than the average person's sphere of influence. The sun and the moon being where they will be during this new moon will bring it more into the personal sphere of influence. The sun in mundane or world astrology represents leadership, and the moon represents the people. They come together during a new moon to say, hey, what's our aligned goal here? And then the leader anchors it in, and the people, or whoever's more active, the field people, will go out and make that happen. And they will bring it back around, and they'll start again in a new alignment. So this is something you can think about too. Now, before this even comes to pass, though, we still have these guys. So Uranus is now in Gemini, which means Uranus is coming into this trine aspect with Pluto. Now, the reason I say coming into is because they're not going to have that perfect, exact degree to exact degree trine until next year sometime. However, 3 degrees is pretty darn close, and they're going to be dancing in that for a while. Uranus, like Neptune and Saturn, is also going to move back into Taurus for a little bit. If you want to know when, we can talk about it because we have our event navigator. So Uranus is going to go retrograde on September 6th. During that retrograde, Uranus will go back into Taurus on November 7th. Uranus will go direct on February 3, come back into Gemini to stay on April 25th, and then stay in Gemini for a while until August 3rd, 2032. So we have time, right? This is our preview. It is starting now. It's going to back off for a minute, and then it's going to come back in and stay that way. And honestly, it's going to hang out that way until Uranus can surpass Pluto. So it's going to take a while, right? They are not fast planets. So what we're looking at, and this is a preview, like I said, of something that is in action for the next couple of years, especially this trine with Pluto. But we also have these two, which we've talked about before. Saturn and Neptune are also very close to conjoining with each other. They're going to tag team back into Pisces and then come back into Aries. And Aries is a really interesting place for them to be. It's not Saturn's favorite sign. So we're having this situation where when they're in Pisces, they're averse to Pluto. Pluto can't see them. But once they're in Aries, they have a conversation going. It's just a hop, skip, and a jump over here. Pluto can see that. It's not in a blind spot. Uranus can also see that. It's not in a blind spot. Uranus and Pluto can see each other. So you can see how there's this conversation going on in this half of the chart where Uranus and Pluto are in trine, and they are both making a sextile aspect to the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. That's a lot of energy. And again, that's basically all of the outer planets involved. Jupiter is staying out of it over here. No one is having problems with Jupiter right now, and Jupiter's not interacting, which honestly, we'll take it for now, right? Technically, it is in a square with Uranus and, with Neptune and Saturn, but it is separating. Jupiter is plowing ahead. One of my fun facts is that the distance between the sun and Saturn is the same distance between Saturn and Uranus. So again, when we're talking about how slow these planets go, and I honestly don't have like a range for how far further Saturn is than Jupiter, but it's far, right? We know that Jupiter takes about a year to cover a sign. Saturn takes 3-ish years to cover a sign. So it's pretty far out there. So that's something to keep in mind. And then, of course, you got like 7 years-ish for Uranus. Neptune takes longer than that. And Pluto can take like 20 years to cover a sign. So you can think it's not evenly spaced planets all the way out. It's spread in wonky situations all the way out. And so the outer planets, sans Jupiter, are all having this big gathering and conversation. Think about it like you would if you were thinking about deities, right? Deities who are looking down on Earth and saying, hey, we're making some changes. Here's what I bring to the table. Uranus likes to bring revolution, progress, inspiration, genius works, excitement, rapid change, radical stuff that we didn't see coming. Saturn likes to bring boundaries and structure. Neptune likes to dissolve stuff that's already in there. So with these two together, it's like mud, right? It's like a blurred line in Photoshop where you make the thickest black line you can make, and then you take the blur tool over it. And so it's, again, what structures are we going to have to blur in order to make room for new ways of thinking. So this is very much the think outside of the old box kind of aspect in a big way. And we sometimes do that to the extreme. So there are ways that we can interpret that as well. Pluto in trine with Uranus, so we have like the wrecking ball is in trine with Pluto, who's like, let's take everything down and till the soil and make everything fertile again and then build it back up. Pluto is like a volcano. It bursts in this big dramatic scale of can be destruction and stuff, and then it makes things fertile for new growth. And so it is that cycle of rebirth that we see here. And that's my dog, so I apologize for that. So yeah, hello, Meg and Stephanie. Thank you guys for joining. So Meg, it looks like you're in here twice. That's really cool. All right, so that's what we're looking at. Big changes, and because they move so slowly, that's why I'm telling you it's going to last for a couple of years, because it's going to take them forever to make progress. And so because they are so far out, they move slowly, we're seeing society shifting. And we're, of course, I've been talking about this before, we're already in a time that is beginning a whole new cycle or era or epoch of time. Yeah, puppy validation is so much more fun than phone validation. So we are seeing, hi Gabe, puppy celebrating the cycle of rebirth. You gotta love it. So, and Gabe, let me know your thoughts on this too. Everybody, Gabe is a really incredible astrologer that I respect a ton. So that's why I bring Gabe into the conversation if he's got anything he wants to add. We are in the beginning of an era of air. It is not the age of Aquarius. It is an age of air. After 200 years-ish of Saturn and Jupiter conjoining in earth signs, they are now settled in conjoining in air signs for another 200-ish years. We are at the very beginning of that. The mean conjunction where we can say that roughly began was in the year 2000. And then recently we entered into a section of that, like a smaller piece, a chapter of that story that started in 2020, surprising no one. So that's what we're in, right? So I just want to give you this peace of mind. And I'm actually going to let myself just talk more personally here. I want to give you the peace of mind that I know the world is doing a lot right now. The world is busy and there's a lot we're seeing that is on its way out. And we are I've been getting images of it kind of like a cavity or a root canal, right? So I don't know why. Maybe it's Saturn's in my head about it. Saturn is one of my primary time lords at the moment. So that might be a reason. But if you think about a root canal, right? Because let's try. You have to get rid of everything that was in there that could cause problems. Think about any other analogy you'd also want to share. But anything that's in there, all the gunk has to come out. We have to unclog the drain or no water is getting through. That might be a better one. So we have to make sure that everything is out of there, because let's assume you're drinking out of this water, right? If it's coming down the pipe for you to put in a glass and drink it, how clear is it? Let's make sure it's super clear. So we are working at the top of the pipe right now saying we've got more water coming through, which is perfect for the era of Aquarius, which is the water bearer. So we have this energy of we need to make sure we are clearing everything. Or if you're a singer, right, you need to clear your throat. You need to warm up the pipes here so that you can sing well, so that you can get that emotion and that message across. In the story of dynasties, which is how medieval era astrologers in the Persian astrologers anyway, really saw these epochs like the one we are beginning right now. In these new dynasties of time on Earth, it's going to take time to build. We are finishing, we are bringing closure to that which is, ready to be closed. And then we are building up the new stuff. And the things that we're bringing closure to are going to give us inspiration towards what we want to do differently and maybe in our perspective better than how it was done before. Does that mean how things were done before was just all bad and we need to disregard all of it? Heck no. But it does mean that we're being inspired to change things because the world is different now than it was before, and we need to adapt to that. So it's a time of being adaptable. There is so much happening in air signs and even in mutable signs, especially once Saturn and Neptune get back into Pisces. There's a lot happening. So this is a time for kind of learning how to roll with it, which is not my strength. and I hesitate even saying that because I've got so much earth in my chart. I'm just like, oh, I want reliability. I want to stay in one place. I don't want to have to ever move again. I don't want to have to ever, like change. I just want to figure out my one thing, do it really well, and do it for the rest of my life. We're not in that time. And that's okay, right? It's more exciting this way. The analogy I've been using, Gabe, you may have caught this when I did a live with Vivi Henriette on my Instagram the other day, so you can check that out there. We were talking about these cycles and the epochs within epochs and the sort of Matryoshka doll situation of what's going on right now. So you can get that. Again, it's only a 20-minute conversation on my Instagram. And within that, it's kind of like we are on, yeah, chaos reigns for a while. It does. So what we're feeling is you're on a roller coaster, right? You're on a roller coaster. There are going to be bunny hills. There are going to be steep drops. You're probably going to scream if that's your style. So you get to decide if you're screaming out of fear or excitement. And literally, I'm speaking from personal experience because this is how I trained myself to enjoy roller coasters. I did do this. And in fact, the first time I had that thought, I was young, but I was on Space Mountain in Disney World. And I was like, I'm going to scream. I'm going to let myself scream, but I've decided it's a scream of excitement. So I'm going to put some laughter into that scream, and then I won't be afraid anymore. And wouldn't you know it, now I'm really actually very okay with roller coasters. It didn't change the fact that I was on a roller coaster. It just changed the way I was able to embrace the moment that I was in, because I wasn't getting out of the roller coaster at that point, right? We were going up the hill. If you've ever been to King's Dominion, which is here in near Richmond in Virginia, there is a giga coaster called the Intimidator. And boy, is it ever. I remember it was one of my early dates with Dan, my husband. And he took me to King's Dominion, and I was determined to show him how brave I was. And so we went on every roller coaster. There's one that goes upside down. I'm telling you, we had no hip bars on. It was dark. We came out of it, and Dan was like, did we go upside down? And I was like, I'm pretty sure at least once. What the heck was that? So then we were like, well, we can do anything because we survived that. We go to the Giga Coaster. This thing starts going up the hill. And it's going up and it's going up. And after about 10 seconds of going up, both Dan and I individually, because he was trying to look pretty brave too, and we hadn't communicated that we were both trying to be brave at this moment, we were both just like, this is taking too long. That means the drop's going to be a lot. And maybe I should have rethought this. So you get to the top, and it is an almost, 90-degree drop, or 90 degree? Yeah, it's almost all the way down, right? I don't do math, I do astrology. So it was almost all the way down, and then it banks into a turn. They had to rebuild this coaster because too many people were passing out before. This was the rebuilt version, and both of us still got tunnel vision. Only time in my life I've ever gotten tunnel vision. And then all of a sudden the thing's over. I stand up, I'm like unsteady. I want a whole bottle of water. And I remember saying to Dan, I think I'm done. And he was like, me too. So we got some water, we chilled out, but we did it, right? We went through this moment, we embraced it, we rolled with it, we screamed. I decided I was having fun, even as the dark was closing in, and we pulled through. So even if, and I know, guys, like, the world's literally on fire in some places right now. So I'm trying to make light of this. I'm trying to be encouraging. This is our Monday Magic Mood Boost. And I want you to feel powerful, strong, and capable and empowered to be able to do whatever you need to do, as we acknowledge that the world is going through stuff. Earth herself is going through stuff. People, as like, their collective impact, are kind of having to figure out how to have a better relationship with Earth, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. And so as we're doing that, there are going to be times where you don't get a choice about, if you're screaming for excitement or not. And sometimes you have to buckle in. You have to turn into the version of you that's ready to power through something. And I know you can do it. And then there are other times where it's like, I get to choose how I see this just for today. And so that's another thing that I really recommend if we're trying to be adaptable. The add on to your affirmations where just for today, I'm not going to worry about being angry. Just for today, I'm not going to worry about tapping into social media too much. Just for today, I'm doing this thing. And then tomorrow, you can decide where you're at then. Give yourself these little wins every day. Give yourself a new opportunity to start, a new opportunity to change. Give yourself permission to change your mind and give yourself permission to lean further into the things you deeply believe in and to explore them as much as you possibly can. The more you explore what you believe, the more deeply you can believe in whatever you come to believe by the end of that research. This is one of my biggest doubt busting techniques, is to learn as much as you possibly can and be willing to adapt and to change your mind when something feels aligned for you. If something doesn't feel aligned, that's a sign to research in a different direction or to understand why and then move forward. If you always know why you believe in something, then you're going to feel more sturdy. That can be the lap bar on the roller coaster for you, right? So this is my big suggestion there. And I see your dogs heard my dogs. I'm sorry, you guys. I see we've got a question coming up here. Donna, the Capricorn Taurus, really hopes I can survive. Yeah, I get you. I get you, right? Like, I am fixed and very earthy. And so I'm in a situation right now where we are looking at some changes we may have to make. And both of us are like, oh, but that's going to take so much energy. But if that's what we have to do, it's what we're going to do. Cool. So Ren, hi, says that Emily and I mentioned before that magic is returning to us more and more. Just how magical could Earth get in our lifetime? Yeah, I probably will do the rant after Ren's question. So Emily and I, we're two individual psychic medium people with other techniques that we use as well. I incorporate a lot of astrology into my practice, a lot of folk magic into my practice. Em is stellar with the techniques and the skills that she uses and with her channeled history and a lot of great stuff. The one thing that we've both seen is that people are going to be coming back to understanding the practical uses and the actual leaning into magic. So when we say magic's going to be more real, what I want people to know, and Em has her own opinions on this, follow Em to see what she says about it. Ask her these things when she does lives, or ask us if you're one of the people who follow the Patreons for the podcast. But what we see is that people are going to be leaning into taking responsibility and action in their own magic more. This is where I think my obsession with folk magic is coming in, because astrological magic is there. It's my first love. I love it so much, but we can't do it every day because the alignments are so annoying. Like, for instance, I am trying to find the best Jupiter, exalted Jupiter election that I can, using as many like high strung rules as I can to get the purest, best election. And dude, Saturn needs to back off. The sun needs to be far enough away. The moon should be waxing and not in fall. And like, there's so many things that are kind of getting in the way. Gabe, you saw me complain about this the other day. So astrological magic is not always available in its most perfect form. And that's when we go to other forms of magic. That's when it's like, I still need to do something with this. I'm going to lean into folk magic traditions. So if you want to talk about how magical could Earth get in our lifetime, Earth is already super magical. I want to say that, like, first and foremost, magic never really went anywhere. We just stopped looking for it and we stopped engaging with it as a collective. I'm actually writing a book right now where I had to recently finally got whapped over the head by my guides over the weekend. They were like, your religious system is not allowing for the magic system to work with the political system in your book. And I was like, oh my God, of course, because I'm writing it like modern day. And that's not how it always was, right? I'm actually doing some extra research on Babylonian sky priests, which, oh man, to be alive then, or to at least be able to participate in that. We used to integrate the metaphysical world, if you want to call it that, into how everything was. It was understood. Even if you go back into Shakespearean era stuff, I recommend reading The Elizabethan World Picture by, I think it's M.W. Tillyard. I know it's Tillyard. The Elizabethan World Picture. It's actually a very thin English literature book that Chris Warnock, who was my mentor in astrological magic, made me read first so that I could reframe the world in my mind so that I could allow for myself to see magic better. So I'm going to give that one to you as well. Hey, Aaron. So if you go ahead and read that, which again, super easy, super fast, and it's, Shakespearean, so you can actually see how Shakespeare was playing in with things that could be given astrological connotations and all of that, and magic. Then it's a pipeline, guys. It's going to lead you into all sorts of other things, and you're going to realize magic didn't go anywhere. We just stopped talking about it, and we didn't make it part of our normal day anymore. So it's here already. It's here. And I think what we're feeling is that more and more people are going to return to it. More and more people are going to empower themselves to make that connection again. More and more people are going to tap in and start taking responsibility for the part that we get to play in the way magic is embodied in the world. And so the more people that are practicing with it in the ways that feel right to them, because here's the beautiful thing, right? Folk magic, especially, is dependent on what culture you come from, dependent on the resources you have around you. It's working with what you have. So you can have folk magic for Appalachian areas. And yes, I grew up in northern Appalachia, so we called it Appalachia, not Appalachia. It's still the same thing. So that's something that you can keep in mind. It's dependent on what you have around you. It's being resourceful. It's like cooking, right? You look at the ingredients you have and you make something with it. And you bring your intuition into that, and you like listen to how things work. You taste the flavors and see what works well together. Magic is already there. My suggestion is, if you want to see it come more forward in your lifetime, start working with it in a way that feels right to you. If you want to learn more about that, I love teaching and working and having conversations about that in our Patreon, particularly in the student study, but even on the free tier. You can kind of start getting into and exploring it that way. We have a book club where we're reading books, sometimes nonfiction magical books, and sometimes fiction books that we can see, like, how does that relate to magic and the way we use it. So there are so many ways that you can already have it. And I think the more people lean into their personal connection with the divine, with magic, with the energy of the earth, and all those things, the more we're going to see it become normal and become more prominent again. And that, to me, is the most immediate way we'll see it show up. Because the more you let it happen, the more it can show up, the more it can do, and the more you're going to notice that it's been there all along and you've been doing it all along. You just didn't have the permission to call it that. And so I hope this acts as at least partial permission. The highest permission you can ever get is from yourself, which the Leo new moon will probably help with. So there is that for us. I hope that was a good enough response. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions, Ren. Beautiful question. I loved it. I appreciated it. All right, so I do have a bit of a rant. This one is sort of a blend. Sometimes they're more theological, sometimes they're more astrological. If you have something you want me to rant about, because you're like, I've been seeing this on social media, or I have this question and I don't understand it, bring it to me. Message or comment on here, email me through my website, however you want to do it, and I will research it and I will rant for you based on the knowledge that I already have. So this one, who's ready to explore whether or not psychics are in the Bible? Let me know. I don't have to rant about it. I don't have to. We could continue talking about questions and stuff. If this is something that you'd be interested in, though, let me know. I have some resources. I've researched this one, probably too much. So yes, today's rant, if you'll have it, is about psychics in the Bible. Now, here's the thing. There are mentions of people who do the same things as what we would consider psychic today in the Bible. There just are. There are entire books called the prophets, right? And so let's sit with that for a second. The prophets, and I actually today just read all of Micah, because I am reading the entire Oxford annotated Bible with Apocrypha, with everything this year. And I'm reading a little bit every day so that I can understand as deeply as possible what the heck I'm talking about. Research is key. Understanding what you believe and why you believe it is key. This is stuff I go on about all the time. And this is how I'm showing you that I do try to practice what I share with you. And so right now, I am steeped in what they call the lesser prophets, not because they were any worse than the greater prophets, but because their books were shorter. It's just like the lesser planets aren't any lesser than the greater planets. The greater planets are bigger, they're gas giants. Lesser planets are terrestrial, they're smaller. I don't know why they call them greater and lesser instead of bigger and smaller, but that's the way it is. That's how it is. It's not actually a value connotation, it's a size connotation. And so when we get into this, I'm going to give you a couple different resources. One is going to be the Oxford Annotated Bible. I'm working with the 5th edition. A new edition's coming out. It's not out yet, though. So the 5th edition is the one that I work with. I have the physical copy and I have the digital copy. It comes in both. The digital copy is way cheaper and you can search it. So that's really fun. So let's talk about just some off the cuff forms of divination that were used in the Bible. We see a lot of it in 2 Kings and 1 Kings because they were going through, the kings of the Bible, and the kings, of course, were interacting with their prophets. There was a whole community where prophets lived. Think about it as like Lilydale, New York. And so they had a whole community where prophets lived, and you would have different prophets writing down their prophecies, and that's where you would go. And in fact, there was a time of the month where you were most likely or most recommended to go see a prophet. If you were just someone who was living in the time on the new moon or at a festival, you were expected, it was commonplace to go visit a prophet and ask them a question. I'm sorry, is that not what we do with psychics? Now, here's the difference though. They did have a difference, and I'm trying to keep my personal opinions out of this as much as possible. So I'm going to reference a book that is very important in the Pennsylvania Dutch folk magical tradition, which is called powwow, but I don't like it, so I call it Bracherei, which is named after the Eastern German folk magic that it came from. When the Eastern German practitioners moved over here, they became Pennsylvania Dutch, and people from New England came down, saw what they were doing, associated it with Algonquin stuff, and said, oh, you must be doing powwow. No. So, different because different cultures, right? We want to respect that. So I'm going to say Bracherei. What I mean is Pennsylvania Dutch folk magic traditions. And in this, one of the coolest books about this is The Red Church. It is not red because of blood. Do not worry. It's not violent. But The Red Church, which is a book that was written by C.R. Belardi, because nobody uses their first names in these books anymore. C.R. Belardi wrote about a lot of the certain examples in the Bible that are often used against witchcraft and against psychics and against sorcery and all of that stuff. If you've ever come across someone who tries to cite the Bible at you like I have, they're going to come at you with Deuteronomy. They're going to come at you with Exodus. They're going to have problems with Saul because he went to go see the witch of Endor. And here's the thing. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. So just bringing that up. So yeah, I know, right? So I'm going to try to organize some of my notes here a little bit. In the Red Church, they have a different understanding, or I want to clarify really quickly, because in the Red Church, it talks about witchcraft, but it has a clarifying statement of what it means by witchcraft in this context and what biblically they're talking about when they talk about witchcraft. It is given a bad reputation. I want to separate this from anybody who practices witchcraft today. Just know this is the way that they define it for the purposes of this conversation. I'm cool with y'all. I really, really am. It's fine. In fact, Bracherei was considered white witchcraft in a lot of cases. They were fighting against black witchcraft, which in the day was people cursing your cows and people cursing your livestock and, giving them diseases and all that other stuff. Brachas, which were the practitioners of Bracherei, or we could call them power doctors if we want to go that way. That was the more colloquial thing. We're often just farmers. And so that's where we even get to see more of that folk magic juiciness coming out, right? So to quote Belardi, witchcraft in this sense is working of a burning covetousness, which enchants and blinds. So this is someone in this case, they're talking about people who are trying to manipulate other people. And maybe even you could say, trying to, is it too much of a stretch and giving them too much credit to say this? So working with a burning covetousness, so working out of jealousy, working out of attachment, working out of these, not very open-hearted concepts. And we all get into that space, right? One of my favorite things, side note, when I was thinking about joining the modern mystery school, which I did not do, they defined evil as anything that stops you from progressing towards becoming yourself, or your sort of soul becoming and expressing itself, which is teleology, which I'm going to get into. We have an interview about this on the Alchemist Inkwell podcast coming up, I think next week. It's going to be fantastic. We're bringing on Andrea Gers, Gabe, who's going to talk about teleology, which is the soul learning to express itself throughout life. It's fantastic. So anything that gets in the way of that would be considered evil. That which stops someone from progressing, right? Anything which helps them progress would be good. And so that's a really nice way to take a very gray topic and make it a little bit more black and white if you're autistic like me. So thinking about people who are working in very selfish ways, who are just trying to attack people, who haven't done their mental health work, right? Let's put it in that context. So I would love to give it a different name, but that's kind of what we're looking at when we talk about witchcraft in this context and what you're not supposed to do. Now, do I think that extends fully to the Old Testament after having read the Old Testament this whole year? I don't really know, man. There's a lot I disagree with in the Old Testament, but let's work with it. So what we're looking at here is one of the examples is Jezebel. Has anybody heard of Jezebel? I'm sure you have. This is from 2 Kings. Jezebel's actions are described as keshaphim, which is using seduction to selfish or destructive ends. That was considered witchcraft. So again, magic, not necessarily, but using something to overpower someone else, potentially, right? You don't want to get in the way of someone's progress or their personal growth or those kinds of things. Fine. There's also the example in, I believe it's still 2 Kings, where they talk about Jezebel and her witchcrafts, and it's because she is using her manipulation tactics on people. It's just manipulation tactics in that case. So this is already one case where we're seeing that, yes, there is this understanding of manipulation, intention work, all this other stuff in the Bible. And when is it okay and when isn't it? Because again, all of these people have prophets. So they do think that something's okay. And so that's another thing we can talk about. Another passage in the Bible is 1 Samuel. In 1 Samuel 28, 3-25, this chapter contains the recounting of King Saul's infamous trip to the witch of Endor. And so I'm still quoting Red Church on this. King Saul had purged Israel of all of its magicians, sorcerers, and necromancers. And I will say, from what my understanding of the reading was, it was because they were about to invade, I believe, some Canaanite areas. And they had these people. So in order to differentiate themselves, they had to not have them themselves so that they could feel, I guess, better than. And so that's maybe one of the reasons why they were removed at the time. Contemporary Jewish commentary on this chapter suggests that these passages are a satire on King Saul. The king who purged his land of witches now ends up consulting one. Saul was preparing for a battle with the Philistines and had received no counsel from his dreams or from the Urim. Urim, which I may be pronouncing wrong, was an oracular device used in the temple, obviously usually by the priests. They wore it as a chest piece, and it had gems in it, and they would use it for oracular purposes to sort of divine things. Just gonna let that go too. Okay, so since he wasn't getting anything from his own stuff, he went and he visited the witch of Endor. And in the King James version of the Bible, because again, your translations of the Bible are going to say different things, the woman that had a familiar spirit is what they called the witch of Endor. So that's how the more direct translation goes, a familiar spirit. And then King James, they called her a witch. So again, word choices are very important here. And thinking about King James Version, right? When was that written? What was the agenda? It's very important to think about what this person was trying to convey, what propaganda may have been going on at the time, especially with sacred texts of prominent current religions or religions of times. And so in the King James Version, they called her a witch. But the actual Hebrew is ob, which has a meaning close to our modern word of medium. And as a spiritualist medium, some older commentators actually refer to her as a pythoness, which honestly, like, also a really cool name. Okay, so then we get into other topics of, let's talk about speaking with the dead, right? I'm a medium. I know a lot of you guys are mediums, and we have our own ethics that we have to work with, right? There's a lot of ethics that end up being something that you have to decide for yourself when you get into spiritual stuff, mediumship, astrology, consultation of any form. You end up learning what your ethics are going to be. You end up trying to figure out your consulting skills, where you draw the line between mental health and supporting someone with your divination or whatever. That is not a new conversation. We just do it more prominently now. I think we do it more forward now, which I appreciate. So, um, this is another quote. Biblical injunctions against speaking with the dead are very clear. In the Jewish religion, especially in its older phases, it's considered unclean to come in contact with the dead. So, this may have been one of the reasons, according to this book, why it was something that you just didn't typically do. Also, they had a concept of afterlife that was a little bit different from ours, so that would have been something to also keep in mind. The taboo is usually in regard to corpses, but if we're seeing in First Samuel, it's perhaps the extension of this taboo to the souls of the dead themselves. When you come into contact with that, you're actually unclean. You have to go through this whole big process of becoming clean again. So to practice necromancy, which I personally want to point out is different than mediumship, is to place oneself in a ritual state of uncleanness according to this, and that's unfit for prayer to the God as they believed in them. So Leviticus also says, do not have recourse. This is the one people use on me all the time. Okay. So do not have recourse to the spirits of the dead or to magicians. Whoops. They will defile you. And so this again could really play into, well, it was like coming into contact with the dead, which was an unclean thing in a lot of different cultures. So maybe that's why they didn't like it in that particular example. We have different ways of working now. So we have different perspectives. And I'm going to leave that up to you to make your own judgments on it. So, continuing to quote our red church here, as a result of the taboo against speaking with the dead, brachas, practitioners of brachai, do not typically conduct such activity. I still do. But again, I'm asking if anybody needs to come forward. I'm doing it in a way. My personal ethics are, if this person or someone representing them has anything to share with the person I'm talking to that will help them find closure so that they can do the best in their life, I'm ready to help convey that message. I consider myself a translator, not a summoner, which hopefully is enough for my karma. It's felt pretty good so far. And in this case, to speak with the dead means ritually, or specifically to ritually conjure a deceased person's spirit. And so again, this is a permission thing. We talk about this all the time in our sacred spaces stuff and all that stuff, where we're talking about kind of respecting them as they are people. They still are people. So the spirits of people who are not here anymore still need to be respected as normal. Like a couple weeks ago, someone messaged me about how their child was perhaps seeing something. And they're like, well, what do I do? And I'm like, ask them about them like you would if they were talking about a stranger. Like, do the same thing that you would if it was an actual person that you could physically see as baseline. Let's just keep it normal, right? Let's accept it in that way, at least to a certain extent. So, this is not actually to be confused, according to this book, with praying for the dead or speaking to dead relatives when you're thinking about them. So there already is this gray area that you can work within, right? We're not summoning someone up out of their rest in order to tell them to go do something or in order to demand of them something. You wouldn't text someone in the middle of the night and say, hey, what's your favorite color, right? So to me, that's a very similar thing too. And again, if you have other thoughts on this, I'm totally open to it. This is where I am on my research currently, and I'm always open to evolving my understanding. So some brachas carry this taboo even to the length of never speaking to ghosts when they manifest. So we're already acknowledging ghosts. When ghosts come, they usually do so on their own volition and not because they were forced by the way of sorcery or of some kind of manipulation technique. If you encounter spirits or ghosts, this book says, it's perfectly legitimate to query them in order to discern if they are from God or from the devil. I take this in a separate direction as well, to discern if they mean well or if they're just being cocky. Like, I know we've all run into like ghosts that just want to trip you up, or spirits or energies that just want to trip you up. And that is in itself sort of a little trial that you come into. Whenever I encounter an energy that you could consider demonic, my first reaction these days is, okay, what did I miss? Sorry. What are you kind of showing me? What's the challenge here that I'm supposed to work around? And I will tell you, it's worked. where it's like, oh, it's this. Cool. Thank you. Sometimes it's a little bit more complicated and harder than that. But often that's how it works with. If we come up with our own demons, think about it that way, right? You're coming against some kind of a friction that you need to work with. And a lot of the times, mental health is an important facet of this, important to keep in mind all the time, especially as you get into spiritual stuff. You need to be able to keep yourself whole and intact as you're doing this other stuff. You do not want to put yourself into spiritual psychosis ever. Ever, ever, ever. Always do your mental health. Therapy is a spiritual practice. Mental health is a spiritual practice. Personal development is a spiritual practice, and spiritual work should all go in line with that. Physical work is a spiritual practice. Body, mind, spirit. Yeah. Body, mind, spirit. It all goes together. So, So it's also, yeah, they actually point out here, this is actually known as discerning spirits. It's a spiritual gift in the Bible, listed in the book of Acts. Discerning whether a spirit is there to help you or is there to trip you up. That's a spiritual gift that Paul talks about in the book of Acts. It is in the Bible. So we have that to work with too. This is basically, if you want to boil it down to, know who you're working with. We always talk about like a Ouija board and how like you don't want to just summon up anything because you don't know what the intentions are and where they'll lead you, and you don't just trust strangers. Stranger danger happens in the spiritual world too, right? So just know what you're working with and have a conversation, have agreements. It's really important. More examples of where divination is actually used normally show up in 2 Kings of the Old Testament too. Some people like to say Old Testament says no, New Testament says it's okay. Old Testament says it's okay just as long as you're not the enemy we're trying to take over. So in 2 Kings 4:23, you've got a Shunammite woman where her husband asks her if she can go to the prophet Elijah and Elisha. Probably some of my favorite prophets because they had so much sass, to be honest with you. Read about them if you want to. I recommend the Oxford Annotated Bible because it's more direct, trying to be a very true translation. But on that particular day, the woman was like, why would I go talk to the prophets? It's not the new moon or the Sabbath. So those are the days you would typically set aside for religious observance and visiting a prophet. Who is a prophet? A prophet is someone who can hear the will or the voice of the deity they were working with, which again, these were working with the deity Adonai, who they also equated to being a singular god. They were monotheistic. They stuck with Adonai. Other cultures were more henotheistic, especially in the Babylonian area, the Sumerian area. They understood like, you have your gods, I have mine. They're all doing really great stuff, and that's cool. And I really like that too. It's called henotheism. You can focus and say like, I work with this god in particular, but yours is great too. We can all get along. Beautiful. And then in 2 Kings 13:15, Elisha actually has the king shoot an arrow and then says, go grab that and smack the ground with it. And the king only smacks the ground 3 times. And Elisha was like, oh, dang, if you would have done it more, you actually would have beat your enemy more than you're going to beat him now. But because you only did it 3 times based on your intuition, that showed me that you're not going to beat them as much as you think you are. That's divination, right? So it is there. So this is all to say, yes, it's in there. Yes, it's allowed and permitted. And there is maybe a little bit of ethics that they're trying to pull out, in the context of, are you doing, hurt to anybody? Are you hurting yourself? Are you doing this for the right reasons? Are you forwarding things? Are you making more opportunity for progress and alignment and connection with whatever divinity you're working with? Those kinds of things lead to your soul progress, lead to another person being able to progress, right? If it gets you unstuck in your process, looks to me like that's typically okay. You're always going to want to trust your own judgment. And if you wanted some guidance, again, that discernment of spirits thing is really cool to be able to say, oh, wait, let me just imagine that we're not as separate as we think. And let me figure out if I can trust you or not. Just treat it like it's normal. Again, if you want to bring magic into the world, let it come in by just doing it. It was, yeah. So I'm just going to go back through some questions here really quickly, or the comments, to see how that's going. Your great grandmother was an indigenous healer, Ren. That's awesome. Yeah. So they call her white grandma. She was my great grandma, my grandmother's grandmother. And she was a bracha. She didn't write anything down or pass anything down, but I was able to channel her as I was learning my healing. So I was then able to find a bracha lineage, and they validated everything I had channeled and gave me a little bit extra too. So that was really cool. Books are everywhere these days, which is also really great. Again, discern your authors as you would discern spirits. Make sure you got a good resource, but that's really helpful. Jen, I got very lucky finding you, Emily, Rebecca, and Theron when I was beginning to open up and was able to really absorb what ethics should be involved in mediumship. Yeah, that's huge. Honestly, I grew up on John Edward, which really helped me because he always validated and he was very focused on that kind of stuff. So that led me down a pretty good path too. I feel like it's really true. I will always be grateful for the influence that everyone has had on my life. I'm really glad about that. Thank you, Amber, for being so encouraging to everybody. Awesome. Spirit stranger danger. It's a thing. Oh, the alchemist inkwell saved me from the brosphere of ceremonial magic. It can be a brosphere out there. Yeah. I'll take their grounded, compassionate approach to magic over Crowley any day. Crowley is a thing. Yes. So thank you all. I'm going to head out right now because we're getting ready to go film our next episode of the alchemist inkwell. So thank you all. I hope that this felt really good. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments. And if it was helpful, let me know what part helped the most. I'd be happy to have that as well. Thank you, Gabe. I always appreciate you being here because I feel like you helped me learn. So thank you as well. I'm doing even more research. I'm excited to be able to share it with you. If there's something you'd like me to rant about, again, I will research it for you. And I will admit where I don't know something and I will try to fill my gaps. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Next week, we're going to talk about the new moon and also maybe a little bit about Mars on the South Node. All right. So look forward to that. Bye.